Hi, everybody. Good evening at these interesting times that we're having. So, this is Leigh, Ankrum Institute, and we're doing a live Facebook feed on tailbone falls. That was what I was going to talk about at the school. So I want to start a little bit further back than just a tailbone fall because I think it's super important to really understand it from a bigger picture and how big and how important a tailbone fall actually is. And I'm sad that medical and other people in other kind of body practices don't actually ask about this, because by the time I finish with this lecture, you guys are going to be like, wow, why has nobody ever asked me that before? So first of all, I just want to name the systems of the body, because a tailbone fall affects all the systems of the body. So it's really, I actually think it's kind of interesting. So when you have the nervous system. There, of course, there's muscle, and of course there's skeletal and skeletal. Then we have organs, right? There's an A in organs. I did left that A out. There's organs, so there's nervous system, muscle, skeleton, organs. There's blood, right? Right, there's your autonomic nervous system, ANS. This is your autonomic nervous. Hi, everybody. Good evening. Oh, shoot. And in this autonomic nervous system is the one that runs many of the other systems. So I just wanted to name a few, because as I'm talking about all this, then we're going to bring this in as well. Okay, so your sacrum, the sacrum. Here is the sacrum, and where is the sacrum positioned? The sacrum is positioned at the bottom of the spine, just below the lumbar vertebrae. So, and I want you to notice that when I turn it sideways, that there is a little bit of an angle here. So there's a little bit of an angle in the way the position of the sacrum actually is. I'm going to show you the pelvis from the front so that you can see the tailbone and the sacrum actually from how it sits in the pelvis itself. So both of the hip bones kind of hold the sacrum a little bit. It's actually supposed to be floating in there, but that's a joke. So both of the ilium on either side has the sacrum in between, and there's the tailbone at the very bottom. Okay. They talk about this sacrum sort of tailbone complex as the roof of your pelvis. Okay. So here we go on our sacrum, our tailbone fall journey. So your sacrum on this angle. So what happens when you fall? There's two ways or two results that can happen when you have a tailbone fall. I either fall down so that I catch the front of the tailbone and my whole sacrum goes more horizontal. Someone who has this kind of a fall actually looks like they have a much bigger bottom. So their butt looks much bigger because they have fallen and the sacrum has gone in this position, and that's what it looks like. The other option, or the other way that you can fall and have an issue, is that you actually fall on the back side of your sacrum and catch it this way, and the sacrum itself goes, whoops, I'm trying to find out how to do this for you. The sacrum itself goes more vertical. Okay, so it becomes more vertical. The opposite is true here. So when a sacrum is more vertical, the opposite of the horizontal sacrum is that you now have someone who looks like they have no butt or a flat butt. That's what happens here with this. So so we've either had where they've fallen and caught the front and somebody has a bigger butt like this, or they've caught the back and they're now more vertical and they have a flatter bottom, is what it looks like. So what's the importance of this whole deal? Now, I showed you the pelvis, and I'll show it to you again because I want you to see that the pelvis has the bowl. So they call this the pelvic bowl, okay? So our deal is, pardon me for doing this. So our deal is that pelvis goes from being a circular bowl when you have a tailbone fall to being more oval. And it doesn't actually matter which way you fell, you're going to get from a bowl, I don't even know what I want to call this one. So you're going to get much more oval when the change happens. And notice that you're much closer together. This is let's say this is the front and this is the back. You're going to get closer together front to back. So, having said that, you know that all the contents inside the bowl are going to be squeezed, aren't they? Yes, they are. So, okay. So I want to talk about muscles and fascia inside the bowl itself. Okay? So, what's happening is that we naturally have layers and layers and layers of fascia, naturally. So our pelvic bowl is what's helping to support all the rest of us that's above, right? So we have a lot of layers of fascia in here to help the support of things. And also within the layers of fascia are my muscles and my organs are tucked within there. So we have this tucking within the bowl, within the fascias in the bowl, all muscles and our organs. So hopefully everybody's getting this and you understand this. Okay, so of course if I now have this tailbone fall, what's happening is I have tension patterns on my muscles and on my fascia here, right? So we go from having like ease here to having tension here. Okay, so you guys are with me. You guys are with me. This doesn't even speak to the, let me say this. So here is my sacrum. I'm drawing a picture of the sacrum, and here are my lumbar vertebrae just above. Now there's 5 lumbar vertebrae, right? I just drew 3, but there are 5 of them. And what happens, and it doesn't matter whether my sacrum goes horizontal or my sacrum goes vertical, right? It does not matter. What is going to happen now is that all of this is going to rise, and all of these discs are going to get squeezed, right? So the discs are going to get squeezed. So, here's my question, okay? Because I always have a lot of questions. Here's my question. Is that you have somebody going in who has pain in their low back, right? Why are people not putting into the equation what has happened in the tailbone? If someone had a tailbone fall, and what has happened? Like, has that happened? And like, what has been the outcome that's happened from having that tailbone fall? So for me, it's important to understand this when someone has low back pain, is had they had a tailbone fall, so that once again, everything is going to get compressed together. So you're going to have this compression that's going to happen down there. You're not going to get someone and help them all the way until you can help reseat the sacrum where it's supposed to be. Right? The fact that the tailbone at the bottom end might be turned under, there's a big pieces of meaning and symptoms from that. We'll talk about that. But the other piece is that's just as big or bigger is the fact that the sacrum has now gone up and it's compressing your lumbar spine. Right? Right. Okay. So, all right. I'm just trying to think like where I want to go with this. So this is so important to decompact your sacrum off of off of your vertebrae here to create the space that needs to happen here. This is one of the reasons why people blow out discs and stuff, is because there was a fall and the compression has happened, and now of course the space is diminished and the disc is actually going to can blow or bulge or whatever, herniate, however you'd like to describe that. Okay? All right, you guys, if you have any questions or anything, I've got my trusty assistant Lori watching. So you feel free to ask anything you like. Okay, so that was our skeletal changes, right? So now let's talk about what's happening in our organs. All righty, so let's look at some organs. So one of the things that happens, here's a side view of my sacrum, okay? And what happens is, and here is in the front, this is my pubic bone, okay? Now, I always like to talk about this like it's a sandwich or something. You know, everything's got to have a food-related thing for me. Okay, so ligamented to your sacrum is your bowel. So the last part of the journey of waste through is going out just in front. It's ligamented to my sacrum. You know what, you guys, that is bad. Purple is not working. We're going to change this. Okay. So the bowel is in front of your sacrum. This is your bowel. We'll put a big B. It's ligamented to your sacrum. Everybody got with me so far? So now let's do a woman. Okay, so this is a woman. And in front of her bowel, now here, we'll just do it this way, is her uterus. And I want you to know that her uterus is ligamented. So the same ligament that's ligamenting from the sacrum to the bowel is now ligamented to her uterus. And now what's happening, look at this, you know I can't draw. So what's happening is, here's her bladder, huge. So it goes sacrum, bowel, uterus, bladder, ligamented once again. So you have this ligament that goes all the way from the pubic bone to the sacrum. And now we have a bladder, uterus, and bowel in this bowl here. So what happens now is, first of all, my sacrum goes vertical, my bowel changes its angle, my uterus changes its angle, and I'm going to talk about that separately in a second. My bladder now actually changes its angle, and now my pubic bone is here. So instead of having this angle like this, I now am more like this. Okay? I am much more like, instead of them sort of being stacked on an angle going down, it's almost like it's a linear piece. And this is super common. This is very, very common for this to happen. Don't forget what I said earlier. Don't forget the oval as opposed to the circle. So all of this now is having to fit in this corridor here as opposed to the circle there. So this is the front, the pubic bone. This is the sacrum. And now what I've got is, I've got a shorter, smaller amount of room from the back to the front for all of this to fit in. Okay? You guys with me? So, of course, it follows that what's going to happen is, what's going to happen for a man, although a man is shaped differently. So here's his sacrum and here's his pubic bone. And he has the bowel right in front of the sacrum as well. Also, the ligament that's going to be tracking through everything. And what happens for him next is that his bladder is here and his prostate is there. Prostate is smaller, but you're ligamenting through them all to the pubic bone. I don't draw well, but you get the gist. Same thing is going to happen here. He's going to be in an oval right? But it impacts him less in function in here than it does a woman. Okay, so let's talk about a woman's body with these organs down there. So the uterus, if this is somebody's nose, so we're now going to talk about the organs, the uterus and the bladder in a woman, okay? And here's her nose, a little thing like that. So that's the front of the body going on this side. So what's happening here is that the uterus sits kind of like this. And then the bladder sits underneath. Okay, you guys sort of see this. So the uterus has a kind of a curve towards the front, and the bladder is underneath it, like that. And then, of course, we have our pubic bone over here. Okay? But what is very super duper common is that when the tailbone fall happens and the impact goes up, that the uterus can go like this and be more vertical. Or the uterus can go backwards. Or the uterus can go even more and flipped all the way. So you can have any degree of this, okay? You can also have it where the uterus falls more forward. That's less common than this, than the uterus going backwards, as we're saying. Your doctor has probably said to you, you have a tilted uterus. And if he said to you, you have a tilted uterus, that's because this is going on. Now, did you get it from a tailbone fall? I don't know. But with a tailbone fall, this is a super common piece. So let's talk about 2 or 12 things here. When the uterus does this, it creates women to have usually, I'm not going to say always, but usually a woman will have a longer, heavier period when the uterus is back like this. They are the women who end up, having much 7-day periods, heavy, sometimes painful, sometimes not. They are also the women who, and I'll jump to women in menopause and perimenopause, who are the ones that tend to have the kind of deal where they have as their period is changing into the menopausal time, they'll end up with longer periods and shorter times in between them. They're the ones who bleed very heavily. And I have to tell you, when I take histories on people, it's these women with this configuration who are the ones that tend to end up with hysterectomies, because they keep bleeding and bleeding and clotting and bleeding. So it's an interesting kind of deal around this. This could have happened when you were 2 years old. I mean, it doesn't have to happen as an adult. It can definitely happen when it's 2 years old. So now, let's stay on the uterus. Don't forget the oval, you guys. Don't forget that now the shape of the pelvis is in an oval. So now we have this uterus, and they call it retroversion, okay, a retroverted uterus. And when it's going backwards, an anteverted uterus is going forward. So this retroverted uterus, when having a baby. So let's talk about that, because a woman who has had a tailbone fall, and if this scenario has been created, what happens is they're the ones who end up back labor. And don't forget, now the space is smaller for the baby to kind of try to get through. It's a difficult situation. It really is. I don't think that it's uncorrectable. I just think that it's more women have this out there than actually realize. So in this retroverted uterus, you tend to have back labor, and that it is very painful. It's very painful. So we're on our tailbone fall, guys, and so this is part of what can happen, and it's actually very common that this happens. Okay. Hopefully everybody's with me. So now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the bladder. Okay, And especially on a woman. It doesn't do this on a man when he falls on the tailbone. Because part of the deal, of course, is in this pelvic bowl, a woman's pelvic bowl is more generous and it has a more sort of empty quality. I say that loosely, so that when she becomes pregnant, the ability to expand and, fill it with baby is there. So what happens here is that, but we're on a tailbone fall. Don't let me go digress too much. Okay, so here's your bladder, and you have the urethra coming off of the bladder, okay? So you have the urethra coming off of the bladder for evacuation. And there is a little valve in here, okay? So there's a little valve in there. And the bladder is ligamented as well as the one that goes all the way from front to back. Trust me, there's lots of different ways that things are secured in the body, but there's a ligament that from the bladder to the behind the pubic bone. So one of the things that happens is, in the tailbone fall that can happen, is that the bladder can shift a little bit, okay? So the bladder can shift a little bit. And when it shifts, I'll draw this bigger. So here's my opening valve, and here's my urethra. When it shifts, what it can often do is, I can't draw, guys. So I want to take this part off. So when it shifts, it can leave the valve open. So you can have women who have a little bit of incontinence if you sneeze or if you run or if you something that can create a little bit of urine actually coming out of the bladder because the bladder is in a different position. Now, I do want to say, I keep looking at the wrong part, you guys. I'm so sorry, but you get it. So now I'm looking at myself teaching you guys. That's what I'm doing. Okay. So you can also get this scenario here so many other ways. Like if you had to have a C-section, or you've had some kind of surgery, or trust me, even if you pronate down in your feet, it actually pulls all the way on the bladder. So this doesn't have to be the only way you can get a little bit of incontinence. It's just another way. This is another way that you can have that. Okay, we're in our organs, aren't we? So now, as a recap, we have the sacrum, the bowel, the uterus is in front of that, and the bladder is in front of that. And especially on a woman, it can really change the nature of the positions of all of the organs, and it can inhibit the function or inhibit the correct way that it functions. I mean, women who have these back labor babies, I say, and so how many days long is your period? And I almost always get that it's a 6, 7, 8 day period. So those things go hand in hand together quite often, very commonly. Okay. So now we've talked about the bones and how we can get compressed lumbars from this and disc issues. We've also talked about fascia, how the fascia really contracts, and so does the muscles. Now let's talk a little bit about, of course, on the front side of the sacrum, you can see all these holes. Let me hold this so you can see this, is that you can see all these holes, and that's where nerves are exiting. Nerve roots are exiting, right? So these nerve roots are exiting, and they're going to down the legs and structures within the pelvis. But trust me when I say that the innervation of things like the prostate and the bladder and stuff is coming from higher up the lumbars. So when you hit here, it's absolutely going to affect them, but the nerves that are innervating, prostate, bladder, you get it, is coming from L1, L2, L3. So it's coming much higher than it is coming from in here. This is innervating more down the legs and so forth, and in the pelvis, it's in the pelvic musculature itself. Okay, we're doing good. Everybody's with me. All right. I hope I'm not talking too fast. Good. My assistant said I wasn't. How do you like that? Okay. So now I'm going to talk about for me for me, what I think is one of the most important parts of this. Well, you know what? Let me back up a hair. You know, is that I want to talk, something just came in my mind that I thought I'd share with you. Oftentimes, it isn't always, but oftentimes when that pelvis goes from being a circle, being a bowl, to being an oval, the tension will be so great within the oval, right? That what can happen is, let's see if I can draw this, okay, you guys, is that, so we're talking about the tension being so great within the pelvic bowl that that here's, I hope I can do this. Okay, so here's somebody's legs, you know, and they've got their feet, you know, and here's their legs and their feet, right? And you get a really tight pelvic bowl, okay? So we've got a really tight pelvic bowl. So what sometimes can happen is that their weight, like if they're carrying some extra weight, it can't go down into the bowl because it's too tight. So you'll get somebody who looks like they've got like either a donut around the middle or a part that's just too big and too full above, because what's happening is that there's so much tension within the pelvic bowl that it doesn't let it sit in. And this is really super common, say on a pregnant woman. A pregnant woman, the pelvis won't accommodate an opening. It won't open enough. And so what happens is they'll carry the baby way in front. I mean like way in front, because they can't open to get that baby seated into the pelvic bowl as well, or the pelvis, as well as the rest of them that's supposed to be open for the baby. So I wanted to say that to you. I didn't want to forget. Okay. Now we're going to what I feel is the most important, one of the most important parts. I mean, this is off the charts. So I don't know if any of you guys watched the last one I did, where we did it at the school. My school is sitting there by itself. It's very sad. Is that I did a whole talk, my last talk, on the autonomic nervous system and the impact in the autonomic nervous system, and how the autonomic nervous system is that self-regulating system. And when there's traumas or insults into that system, then what happens is that you have an increase of anxiety, a dysregulation of sleep. We talked all about this, dysregulating sleep, dysregulating digestion. It go on and on and on, okay? And so I hope that you'll go back and take a look-see at that last video that was posted. So here's the deal. Why am I mentioning this? All right, you guys, here we go. Is that the autonomic nervous system is represented in the physical as part of the craniosacral system. And the part that we're interested in today's talk is this, is around your brain and spinal cord, okay? Around your brain, yeah, I bet you know where I'm going now. I bet you do. Around your brain and spinal cord, there are 3 layers of membranes. 3 layers, okay? Called the meninges. You guys have heard it because you've heard meningitis. Meningitis is an inflammation of these meninges. So there's 3 layers here, okay? I'm going to hopefully be able to draw them, guys. All right. You know what I'll do? Okay. I'll make one go outside like this. Beautiful. Oh my God. Does that not look like Edvard Munch's The Scream? Okay. All right. I flipped over to another whole lecture. Okay. So the meninges, the 3 meninges here, I just amused Lori a lot. Okay, so the 3 layers of meninges, the outside layer is very tensile strength, and then you have a mid layer and an inner layer. The innermost layer is a layer that follows all of those parts of the brain that go in and out and up and down, right? So that innermost layer does that. It's like almost like a second skin on the brain, or a skin on the brain. It does go down the spinal cord and kind of hugs the spinal cord, as it were. Okay? And what does it do? Okay, you guys, it is all those layers of those meninges go down, they go down, and they go, there's a canal inside your sacrum, okay? And the two outermost layers attach at the level, I'm going to show you on here. I happen to have a sacrum right here in my pocket. Okay, so looking in here, I'm going to get closer to the thing, to the picture. Can you see in here? Oops, I'm going the wrong way. Can you see in here? Can you see in here? There's the sacral canal. All right, and those two whoopsie, I can't get this turned right. Those two outermost layers attach inside the sacral canal at the level of what they call S2. Okay, so it goes in and attaches right here. And the deal is that it attaches right here. But, okay, here it comes. Your innermost layer, this innermost layer, keeps on going, guys, and surrounds your tailbone. It goes all the way down to your tailbone. You can't see it in my pic, but that's okay. You can get it. So, you know, it goes all the way to your tailbone. Everybody okay? Anybody have any questions? Anything like that? Because I'm happy to answer any questions. Anyway, so this innermost layer that surrounds your brain and spinal cord and attaches around your tailbone. And what happens, you guys, is that when the impact comes in, right? When the fall on the tailbone happens, that impact goes all the way through the whole system. When it does that, doesn't it tighten on your brain? Hi, yes it does. So this whole meningeal system is affected, but that innermost layer is the one that really goes and tightens even more. So what does it do? It elevates tension, elevates stress, elevates anxiety, it elevates, you know, all of that, muscle tone, all the things that come with an elevated autonomic nervous system. So, you know, when that gets elevated like that, it actually affects everything, heart rate, breath rate, all of that. So we have a question. How do you recommend fixing the stuck tailbone? Okay, I'll get to that. So anyway, so what we now have is tension in the system that's creating tension in every other system. When there's tension in this system, it makes your muscles tight. When there's tension in this system, it dysregulates your sleep. When there's tension in this system, it slows down your digestion. So when you have a tailbone fall, the cascade of how many things, that's why I think, you know, doing a lecture about a tailbone fall is not a small thing. It's actually a big thing. You might think, oh, it's just a tailbone fall. But that's not the case, actually. And especially when you start thinking about it in terms of the autonomic nervous system as well as these other organ issues and bone issues and so forth. So the person Lila, asked, how do you fix the tailbone? You know, I have to tell you, the way in which you've got to do it is go to a practitioner who knows how to work, and most of the time it's internally, you know, and so that here in Tulsa we have a couple of physical therapists who do internal work to release it. We have an osteopath who actually does some releasing of the coccyx and so forth. So you really need help, because that's not something that any kind of yoga-y positions are going to take out, or Pilates is actually going to take out, because it's something that has to be directly worked itself, and you have to release all of the tissues that are in the pelvic floor itself. So it's kind of a deal. But I have to tell you is that I also talk to my clients about this, because many people are squeamish about the idea of having somebody do something internal. And when I'm sending them off to go do that, I tell them it's pretty miraculous, the change that happens. The things that get released, and the ability to feel like your whole body can settle inside its own pelvis and be supported in the way that the pelvis is supposed to do is, I mean, that's really huge. It's very huge. So anyway, I'm trying to think if there was anything else I wanted to tell you. Does anybody else have any kind of questions or anything? I'm trying to think if there was anything else that I wanted to share with you about. Well, you know what? Let's do one little thing here, okay? So I'm going to go back to. I apologize for being a little out of order, but I'm just thinking in my brain. Is that when that sacrum, the most common one, makes vertical, one of the things that happens here, and we'll show it sort of here sideways with this guy, is that the whole pelvis actually goes forward. So it's not just oftentimes just that the sacrum did it, but that the whole pelvis goes a little more vertical. When that happens, watch when I do this in the front, let's see if I can do this, is that the whole thing goes, I don't even know where to get positioned. The whole thing becomes more vertical like this. So it's not just that the sacrum in the back there does that, but the whole thing does it, as well as the pubic bones. When that happens, you have people who have a tendency to have thicker quads because the quadriceps, when the whole pelvis comes forward, the quadriceps actually contract, and you have a lot more contraction of the quads, and you have a contraction of many of the posterior muscles that are connecting to the sacrum themselves. So there's a whole thing. I personally believe that tailbone fall is way up there with big issues with, big effects. There's a lot of things that happen. So anyway, so thank you everybody. Even though it didn't last for an hour, it lasted for as long as I had stuff in my head, and I'm just happy to do it. We'll be also look on the Facebook page, and if you have any questions you think of, I'll be happy to answer them. But we will be doing this in the future again, and I'll let you know what the topic is, and that second Wednesday of the month, 5:30 to 6:30 or 6 something. We're just going to do that. Thank you, everybody. I look forward to talking to everybody. Bye.
Well done. I don't get the questions. I didn't get any of them. Just the one. Didn't get it.
Well, if there was any more, I didn't see them.
No, and Alicia said it was just the one because she was getting it on her phone.
If you end this live video, you'll be able to choose if you want to save or delete.